their fathers in their lives because after separation, usually the children go to the mother. So women teach women how to be strong and independent, and women teach men how to be obedient to the women, but they can't really teach men how to be men. They can teach men how to follow instructions, but the problem is that the women that want men to lead, not ask for permission from the women, are not going to be satisfied with the type of man that is being built because the man is being built to follow the lead of the woman. And then the women are overly masculine. And in order for the man to be with the woman, he would have to abandon his masculinity to allow her to be free to be masculine so that she stays with him. But we're still in a position where men are giving up everything to convince the woman to stay without ever finding out if that's the person that they want. And that's a really big change that we need to make as men because he said the show hasn't started yet and we're both in trouble. You're right. You're right. Downward slope. But we got to cover the topic. We got to cover the topic because men and women's interactions with one another is going to primarily come from the core upbringings, but the men and women's upbringings are also going to come from social interactions. So each time a woman interacts with a man, she is conditioned by those relationships how to behave going forward. Each interaction a man has with a woman is going to condition him on how to behave going forward. Some people, man or a woman, will uh, be a selfless person, get into a relationship with a selfish person, and become more selfish. Some people get into a relationship with a selfish person and then retreat from engagements because they don't want to be mistreated and taken advantage of. They don't always all become more selfish, but when they're in a relationship with individuals where they're more uh, um, overpowered, where they feel helpless in those situations, those individuals, regardless if they're male or female, put more effort into being more defensive towards their position so they do not feel as helpless in the next relationship. But that still doesn't change the fact that, you know, we're hurting ourselves. Men teach boys, women need to teach girls, but that is a problem too. Weak minds. Well, you have to understand that men are supposed to teach boys. Men do not teach boys. Men teach other men because the men aren't in the boys' lives until the boys are like 18 or 24. When the boys become men, boys to men, and they start getting male mentors from their boss, from the old guy at the corner store, from the old head at the barber shop, from their teachers, from their internship, from some of the male friends that they make in their society that just so happen to be older than them by a long shot. That's when they start having mentors. They don't always have older brothers that are like 15 years older than them with the wisdom to give them the guidance. They don't have fathers in their lives to give them grandfathers in their life, not in Western culture. They don't have uncles that'll give them guidance, cousins that'll give them guidance. What they have is whoever they've met along the way that they're willing to listen to gives them guidance. Now, women have women teaching women from birth, and women will have women inspiring women throughout their life. Women's support system, be it positive or negative, will be that support system forever. Okay. It never changes because from birth, the children are with the woman and then they flock around the women, and then they socialize around the women. And then as society destroys them, they start inspiring other women based on their bitter experiences. So the women have a network, be it positive or negative. The men do not. It's not the same. So we have to understand that men have a disadvantage with their the masculinity expectations from society and the lack of support of that societal expectation. So we got to go ahead and cut in there because it has a very specific set of rules, and most of us know them by heart because they've been whispered or shouted on playgrounds, in locker rooms, and across our culture. We have to recognize rule number one: don't show your feelings. That is the cardinal rule. Men don't cry. You know, boys don't cry. So the sadness is not a thing that mature men are allowed to have. So they, instead of being sad, they project anger. Instead of uh, projecting depression, they express fury. But the fact is that if they don't express happiness or contentment, they are supposed to not express anything other than anger, which is wrong. And then autodidacted, which is self-taught. Okay, new word to remember. Autodidact equals self-taught. Now, you know what the biggest problems with having a self-taught man is? You don't know what a good man is, and you teach yourself how to be a good man, but you only learn from other men that you have watched in society, or the stories that you've heard from women in society: mother, sister, auntie, cousin, girlfriend, female best friend that's got you in the friend zone because you like her and she don't want to be with you. And you learn what a good man is supposed to be about from rumor. And then you teach yourself to behave that way. However, that's not always what your society wants. Now, the other problem is that with being self-taught is that we also want to fit in. We also want to be accepted, which means that we modify what we believe a good man should be into what we believe people would like to see a man do, be it good or bad. So we're not taught to stand on principle, whether people like it or not. We're not taught to um, stand up for what we believe in by any means necessary. What we are taught from our society, not from our elders, not from the women that raise us, from our society, we are taught in order for us to get enough likes, in order for us to get enough views, in order for us to get enough clicks on our profile, we have to be that image that everybody clicks on. In order for us to have people surround us, we have to be the image of the person that people gravitate to without knowing what that is. And we just keep caving on our non negotiable expectations so that we are not alone, which is ridiculous. It's hard to teach someone to fish if they never fished before. Bro, it's hard to teach yourself how to fish if no one's taught you how to fish and you've never seen anyone fish and you don't know what fishing's all about. But that's what being a man is about these days. Would that be morals and values? It's everything. Morals, values, social interactions, self-respect, self-dignity. It's everything. Because your moral and ethical code is going to be based on how well you treat society, but then it's going to double back to what you're willing to do in life. I had this conversation with Mr. Pibbs for a long period of time. The difference because I'm a man of uniformity, and being a uniformed individual, you do not have the same moral and ethical compass as everyone else. Reason being is because if it's wrong, it should be wrong all the time. It shouldn't just be wrong because it benefits you for me to be wrong. If it's right, it should be right all the time. And it shouldn't just be right because it benefits you in my situation. What I would do in a situation, I would do that regardless of who's in that situation with me. So if my ulterior motive is to perform a certain action a certain way, recognizing the outcome, Regardless of whether or not other people like what I do, I'm going to do it. But if the rules were changed, if not the rules were changed, but if the people were changed in that scenario, take the men out, put women in, take minorities out, put non-minorities in, whatever, my behavior is still going to be the same. I'm still going to act the same way in the same scenario with different people in it because I'm not going to change my position. It's almost like back in the day, you remember when people used to get into fights because somebody stepped on their shoes. Well, if you're going to punch somebody in the face because they stepped on your shoes, and you're saying that because the person that stepped on your shoes is like 2 feet shorter than you, 100 pounds lighter than you, it's like you're really bullying a little guy. But now, if you're going to stand on principle and the person that stepped on your shoe is like 2 feet taller than you and 150 pounds heavier than you, where they could punch you in the face and fold your face in, if you're going to stand on principle, if you're willing to punch the guy that looked weaker than you, then you should be willing to punch the guy that looks stronger than you. That's being uniform. Um, Now, also, when you start talking about ethics, men say, well, I don't hit women, but that's a sexist thing to say. Well, really, men aren't supposed to hit women. But think about this concept, though. If a man says that if somebody hits me, I'm hitting them back. Now, uniformly speaking, you're supposed to say, well, if that's the case, if a man hits me, I'm supposed to hit him back. Everybody would applaud to that. That's what men are supposed to do. But if a woman hits him, you're just supposed to take that hit. That's not uniform. That's not uniform at all. That, in fact, is a bias. So now it's contingent. And when it's contingent, it's arbitrary. I'm only hitting when it benefits my integrity. And that's different from standing on principle. Principles are I don't want to be hit, and if I'm hit, I retaliate with violence. That is a standard. And if that's a standard, it doesn't matter who hits you, whether it's a man, whether it's a woman, whether it's a child. Now, ethically, if a child hits you and you punch a child in the face, you're going to jail for it. But uniformly speaking, the way it is that if your standards are don't put your hands on me in an aggressive fashion or you will be retaliated against, then you're supposed to stand on those principles no matter who does it. That's what uniformity is. And that comes from a different level of ethics and a different level of morals. That does not mean that you're an unethical person, and it does not mean that you're an immoral person, but your logic and reason comes from the lack of diversification of administering results. You're not going to show favoritism to the new variable. And he said, based on your environment you are raised in, yeah, equal rights. Women have fought to be equal as men. Yeah, equal rights come with equal lefts. That's been a new saying these days. And but the common value is this. Like, for example, me and Mr. Pitts talked about this, the difference between taking a life uh, and using it for consumption. And the reason why we went from this is because we believe that it is morally wrong to take a life. But we take lives in order to eat cows, chickens, fish, right? Now, I said, what is the difference between taking the life of the cow and taking the life of a person? And the his expectation was arbitrarily based on the value of the person's life. And I said, okay, well, so the person who has contributed something to a society and this, that, and the third, you take his life, that's a loss of value, right? Now, what about a person who is homeless who has not contributed to their society? What's the difference between eating that person and eating a cow? He explained again some sort of value in the person's life that somebody would miss him and this, that, and the third, but wouldn't somebody miss the cow? The person who's raising a cow, wouldn't they miss the cow? So then we started talking about the difference between a baby and a cow. Well, if the baby hasn't been here that long, the baby hasn't contributed to the society at all, then he says, well, the value is based off of what the child could do in the future. But what about what the cow could do in the future? The arbitrary standard that eating for substance, taking a life to eat for substance, is still subjective to personal preference, personal bias. But uniformity dictates that if taking a life is wrong, then taking a life is wrong across the board, whether you're doing it for substance, doing it for self defense, or doing it out of rage and vengeance. So when I start talking about uniformity and then other people start talking to me about morals and ethics, we have a very big debate because I mean, it doesn't make sense because your morals and ethics are biasly subjective to whatever you're favoriting to. because when you aren't favored to it, your morals and ethics completely shift. Certain scenarios where we would be like, oh yeah, that person with Tourette's cursed me out, and I'm gonna give him a pass because he didn't know any better. But then you say, oh well, that person who doesn't have Tourette's cursed me out, I'm gonna go beat that person's ass. No, if your response is that if somebody curses me out, that I'm gonna beat that ass, then that means that I don't care if you got Tourette's or not, I'm gonna beat your ass because that is uniformity. He said, turn to the page 167 in the abnormal psychology book. But it's not abnormal psychology. Uniformity is a standard concept. I can't remember the person who founded the concept, but uniformity is a standard concept that is turned to psychology. You have the utilitarian method, you have several other methods, but when you start thinking about sacrificing the few for the many, the sacrificing the few for the many is not a uniform concept, specifically because that concept comes from only if the one person that you're sacrificing is not more valuable to you than the other number of people that you're sacrificing. Dr. Freud. Oh, okay. Good job. Now, the fact is that still, if you can arbitrarily say that sacrificing less for more is the ideology, if you're standard about it, then that means if you're in the less group, you're supposed to get sacrificed for the sake of the more. But a lot of people are going to say, don't sacrifice me, sacrifice the more so that I can survive. And again, it is an arbitrary expectation, which still comes from a position where we don't have uh, a uniform concept. So morals and ethics are subjective and arbitrary, and that poses the problem. So while we're talking about the masculinity today, the reason why I brought up that side topic, that strawman topic, is specifically because the fact is that masculinity across cultures is arbitrarily enforced, subjectively enforced, and in certain scenarios, certain people get a pass. In certain scenarios, certain people don't. He said, I'm throwing you under the bus. You got to. Go ahead, throw me under the bus. Look, as a matter of fact, if I was not on the bus and the people on the bus would only survive if I went under the bus, I would try my best to Jason Bourne that situation and, and survive like a possum in the street. Hope to God that he run over my shins and don't break them so that I can get up and walk away. Because if your torso is in between the wheels and it runs over the most solid parts of your legs fast enough, it doesn't necessarily have to break your bones. You can get up and walk away from that situation. You might be shook. Now, if it rolls over your torso, you're fucked. Just think about it. Now, as it pertains to men not being able to express themselves socially, we have to understand that people believe that sadness is a weakness and fear is unacceptable. So, usually you notice this because in most scenarios, when you're not sure about what you're about to do, you're not sure about what's about to happen to you, you're second guessing your decisions in the moment, you've got the person next to you smacking you in the chest or hitting you in the shoulder, telling you, man up, man up. You know, some of the other phrases they say that I can't say them on live podcast, but they'll tell you, you know, in so many words, don't be a coward. They use different phrases. Don't be a p word. Don't be other things. You know, they really don't behave in a homosexual fashion. You gotta man up, and it's like, bro, what does that have to do with this? Technically, nothing. But again, if you're not acting in place of fear, the fact is that your masculinity gets challenged. And the only emotion that seems to get a pass is going to be anger. So you have contentment, maybe boredom, happiness, fine with everyone. Anger, that's the only emotion you show. Outside of, normal, happy, or, bored, tired, exhausted, normal stuff. When you start talking about feelings wise, anger, that's it. Men can be angry. Men can be furious. Men can be like stack blown, but they cannot act in violence, right? Whew, that's a tough one. Now, crying is treated like a fundamental betrayal of your masculinity. So we learn to swallow our emotions, hoping they'll disappear, but they don't. You gotta compartmentalize and put it in this little box and tape it up with Pandora's name on it and never let it open. Because if it does, everybody's going to start challenging you. Research shows that boys are taught to suppress emotions from a young age, with one study finding that boys hear emotion suppressing messages 3 times more often than girls by the age of 7. And I had to stop and think about that. He said, Michael says, show no anger in public, keep it home. Nah, you get that's a good advice, but I'm gonna say that doesn't happen. You see the road rage out there. You see those big buff guys out there punching each other in the street because somebody cut somebody off in traffic. And honest to God, now that I think about it, for two things, what you just said and what I just read is uh those guys with road rage that are out there like fighting in public and getting out of the car and all of this other stuff, like they are expressing their feelings the only way that they know how. And this is the moment in the middle of traffic that they can get it all out. And true, there's two different ways that this happens, because they don't just get into the fight for the sake of beating up the other person. Some people get into the fight to get beat up because they want to punish themselves for whatever it is that they're thinking about. And usually in those situations, they will get their ass whooped, and they will feel satisfied about that ass whooping because they feel like they deserved it, right? And we learn to cope with it. You're right. Like you said, compartmentalizing it. I'm not saying it to turn, but stay calm. You learn in your middle ages, hopefully. Some people don't. Some people, after catastrophic failure occurs, they learn then, but you learn to stay calm. Uh, Patience is identified as the capabilities of staying calm and the ability to stay humble. And patience is a virtue, meaning that it is not easy for you to stay calm, because there are times, no matter how much patience you have, that a situation that you're in for too long can press your emotions, and then you will end up expressing anger, fury, and rage. It'll happen. You have to catch yourself, regain your composure, and then try to readdress the situation in a more suitable fashion. But when it comes down to um, 3 times or more a day that boys are being told to suppress their emotions more than women or girls by the age of 7, I have to stop and think back to all of the times that I was told that, you know, big boys don't cry and girls or not girls, but men don't cry, stuff like that. And then I think about when I had boys, and I would tell them uh that it's not necessary because big kids don't cry. It's still the same message, even though I wasn't using it from the perspective of, men don't cry. I just to teach the child to control their feelings and control their emotions, that, hey, once you reach a certain age level, you don't just cry all willy-nilly. Like you suck it up, and then you deal with the problem. So I can verify that, yes, by the age of 7, we condition the children to stop crying because some of us don't want to hear it. It stresses out the situation even further, especially if the child is crying for extensive periods of time. But boys are told this throughout their lives, and they're never given the permission or outlet to cry. And I think with the knowledge that I've gained now is that I probably would tell the young boys that, hey, there's a time and a place for everything. Now's not the time. But later, you can do that. You can find a time when you're able to release your feelings, but in the moment, you need to address the situation that you're in. This type of wisdom comes from learning over the years. Michael says, I cried when I got on the bus and headed to Iraq. Man, I would cry when I get on the bus in Heartline headed anywhere because I got to be on this bus. No doubt. Put the cone three seats ahead of me. Just shove the cone a little bit forward, son. I want to sit forward. Now, this conditioning has consequences, y'all, because surprising emotions also will be affected. And it doesn't make them go away. Suppressing these emotions don't make them go away either. And it can lead to depression and anxiety. So when we numb ourselves to so called negative emotions, we accidentally numb ourselves to the positive ones too. Joy feelings, a little less bright, right? Connection, a little less deep. We end up living life in a gray scale, convinced it's the only way to be strong. Talk about them with friends. Well, exactly. I've got a buddy from way back when, and he would come and cry on my shoulder on a regular basis and tell me how much he wish he had somebody with him. And I would listen because it takes a very strong man to be able to tell somebody that they're lonely, to tell somebody that they wish they had a partner with them, to recognize that they have faults, that they have not gained the capability to change, and they understand that they are alone for reasons that they have not rectified yet, but still recognizing that they would prefer not to be alone. It takes a strong man to do that. But not too many people accept that. Not too many people want to hear that. A lot of times, especially if you're saying it while you're drunk, a lot of times people disregard everything that you say. When in truth, you might have drank enough to gain the courage to finally confess the observation that you know that you're not satisfied with your life and you know that your life needs to change and you have yet to put forth the change in your life. Is that's not that's self pity. Well, first of all, you have to understand that self pity is not making the change on purpose so that you can have what is called a pity party with other people so that those people can coddle you and provide you with unnecessary resources because you put yourself in a position with fixers that will try to fix your problem for you, which allows you to reduce your responsibility in your situation and put the responsibility on the people who are going to fix your issue. That would be self pity. But recognizing truthfully that you are, in fact, in a situation that you're not satisfied with as a man, it does not matter when you first recognize that you are not happy right now. You want change. Change is going to come from recognizing change is needed, then recognizing that something needs to be done, whatever that is. And that's not the same thing because you have to recognize that there's a problem and then recognize that something needs to be done about that problem. Those are like the first two steps of the 12-step program, right? And there's a 12-step program of everything that happens in your life. Then the next thing that you have to do, which is the hardest thing to do, is figure out what do you need to do to make that change. The whole time you don't know what to do to make that change. You have acknowledged that there's a problem and you acknowledge that change needs to be made. And if you're able to go to a friend and tell your friend, I know I have a problem, I know I need to change it, and I don't know how, or I don't have the strength to make that change, that is not self pity. That is recognition. And that is actually one of the bravest things that a person can do for themselves. Because when, as long as you recognize that change is needed, even if you don't have a solution, when a solution comes your way, you're going to be open to that solution. As long as you believe that change is not needed, as long as you believe that there is nothing wrong with this situation, I'm just pissed off just because I got a bug up my butt today. You're never going to solve your problem. You're never going to fix what is truly wrong. If you are lonely, because people don't want to fuck with you, and you don't figure out why people don't want to fuck with you, you're going to forever be lonely. But if you are recognizing why people don't fuck with you, then you can start making some changes. The changes that you will be proud of, because you are not changing for the sake of your society, you're changing for the sake of yourself. Some people don't like you because you don't play to their tune. Fuck them, they're not important. But some people recognize that you could be a better person than what you are, and you could function a lot better to benefit yourself than what you do. And they, before they will put all of their effort into helping you fix your own problems, self medicating you, enabling you, they would walk away from you because they got enough stuff that they're trying to deal with on their own. Those are the people where you take that advice and you apply it to your situation. You can improve some things, which is why here on this and that, when we talk about this, that, and everything in between, we cover so many different topics across the board. If the shoe fits, you can either wear it with pride or you can start making some changes because it, without naming names, without calling you out of the woodwork, if you can listen to what I'm saying and it resonates with you, then that means that in some way, shape, or form, this applies to you, whether you know somebody who's going through this or you're going through it yourself. And a change needs to be made because it wouldn't bother you if a change didn't need to be made. It wouldn't bother you if it didn't resonate. For somebody to get frustrated and thumbs down my channel while I'm saying what I'm saying, that's because it hurt their feelings. It hurt their feelings because they believe that this applied to them. They believe that when I was talking about this in the third person to a third person, that I was talking to them, knowing damn well that I cannot see the person who thumbs down the channel when it happens. Shit, I can't even see when they thumbs up because I'm live. I can figure it out after the show, but during the show, I can't tell who's here and who's not here. So if it resonates and it hurts, that means that you acknowledge the fact that change is needed. But you don't know that change is needed until an intervention happens. And an intervention happens when I pop up on your For You page, and then you end up watching the show, and then you're like, damn, that's deep, right? Now, rule number two, men are told that you must be a provider. Your worth is measured by your paycheck, your title, your ability to get ahead. Women and children are loved specifically because they exist. Didn't what's his name? Either Kevin Hart or Chris Rock say that, and then he turned around and said, "But men are only loved for what they've done, what they've provided, what they've given." Studies like those from organizations such as Equum Equamdo show that men feel immense pressure to be the provider. And a 2024 survey revealed that 71% of young men aged 18 to 24 believe that a man should be the primary breadwinner in a relationship. Now, you understand that in that dynamic, while we have a lot of alpha boss ladies that feel like they get into relationships with men that are insecure about the woman being more successful than the man, that we have to understand that in those positions, that if men were taught that they were supposed to be the breadwinner and the woman is the breadwinner, you would have to recognize that that man is going to feel inadequate in that situation, not because of her, but because of how he was raised by his society, not necessarily his parents, but by society. Michael says, stop crying. Men fix the problem, and you can whine after it is fixed. Bet you won't cry. Problem solved. So why cry? Whip. Well, that's not necessarily the thing, Michael. You have to think about it like this. People say that men are supposed to fix problems, but a man can't fix a problem if he doesn't know a problem exists. So that means that a man has to first recognize that there's a problem, and that's not crying. That is a man recognizing that there's a problem. Now he can cry about it, but then he can also stop crying eventually and start fixing that problem. And then when you say you can whine after it's fixed, now men can complain excessively after the problem has resolved itself, but the problem has already resolved itself. So at some point, you're supposed to be able to let that go emotionally. And he says, bet you won't cry. Probably won't cry after they fix the problem, but that's because the problem is solved. So why cry? Why cry? Because it hurts. That's why I cry. It doesn't make you a wimp because you're crying. It just means that you feel strongly about what's going on and you're not happy about the situation or its outcome. It doesn't make you a wimp because you're crying. It doesn't make you any less of a man because you're expressing your feelings, even if it means that you got to cry in public. Now, a lot of us are taught and told that if you're going to break down in tears, that you should do it in the seclusion of your own home or in your car or in a dark alley somewhere where nobody can see or hear you doing it. And, that maintains your expectations of masculinity. But the truth of the matter is that if you're in a moment where your feelings are hurt, just like a woman can burst into tears, equally, a man should be able to do the same. Feelings are hurt every day, but that does not mean that you are required to cry over every time your feelings are hurt, whether you're a man or a woman. Michael says, I'm callous to people's feelings. Most of us are because we were raised in a generation to give two shits about how people feel. We're there to be the there rock, but don't get your snot on my silk and satin suit kind of behavior. No. Well, yes and no. Yes, you will be remembered for what you do, but you will also be remembered for what you didn't do. Because if your lack of action negatively impacts the right person, they will forever tell the story about how you did not apply yourself to fix the problem. And if your actions positively impact someone, they will forever talk about how your positive action or how your action positively impacted them. People more often than not spend more time talking about negative things than what they do talking about positive things. So you'll more likely have one person tell 10 people about how much you fuck up in life and only have one person tell one person how much you did great in life. So in order for you to be recognized for doing something great, you would have one to one 100 people recognize that you did something great because 100 people recognize one great thing you did. But 100 people will make sure that 10,000 people know that you fucked up in life the one time. So the difference between being recognized for positive things, you would have to do 100 different positive things for 100 different people for 100 people to stand in the same place at the same time talking about how good you are. But you only have to do one thing wrong in front of 100 people for them to tell 10,000 people how much of a fuck up you are. So, yes, you can be remembered for what you do, but you can also be remembered for what you didn't do. Why didn't you save them? Why didn't you help? Why didn't you contribute? Everyone needs to be financially responsible. Everyone is supposed to be responsible, but we have a society that has so many double standards that uniformity is the only way to function for me. And making it make sense is the other way to balance things out. Because in a society where everyone is supposed to be financially responsible, you have to understand that men are still expected socially to be the breadwinner. Men are expected to be the protector and the provider, while women are capable of being better protectors and better providers in certain situations. It is still the social stigma that even women expect to find a man that is more capable of providing than her, that is more capable of protecting than her, because women do not want to get a man that would be her dependent that she would have to protect. Because the mentality of women in modern society is that they're not trying to raise a man. She is not his mother. So, since she, no matter how successful she is, 50, 60, 100, $200,000 a year woman, she's going to find a man 70, 100, $300,000 a year man that is better than her because that is the only way that hypergamy it will function for her. Because if she is not elevated because of this relationship, the relationship is not valuable to her. If she is on the same playing field that she was on before she started dating, she feels like she failed. That is the idea of the majority of women in the Western culture. So if she's not leveling up, bigger house, more cars, expensive stuff, it ain't working. But for a man, all he needs is less stress in his life. And the woman that added to his debt is perfect. The difference in dynamic. She doesn't have to contribute. She doesn't have to have a job. She doesn't have to have an education. All she has to do is take some of the stress off of his plate and he will be happy, not content, happy with her. So Financial responsibility, you're right, but it's not dynamically the same. I get recognized for greatness every day. Of course, I get recognized for greatness every day too. But I get recognized for greatness every day because of almost 100,000 views a month. Because of the things that I say, the inspiration that I provide across social media. I also get a lot of positive praise from all of the people that I teach, the parents of the kids that I inspire. I have one that just went to Spain and got an award in an advanced prep program. And I was like, oh, straight. And that's the second time I've had that happen in the last 6 months because I had another one that was an honor student. I was proud of that. The number of individuals that I can inspire over a generation. You say looking in the mirror. Like I said, if the shoe fits, it's like looking in the mirror. But you are not everyone, nor am I at 70. We're not necessarily everyone, but we have at some point in our life experienced some of the things that we're talking about in today's show. And likewise, if we've experienced this, we have experienced some of the same feelings and we have responded in some situations similarly, which also means that we can resonate with the concepts that are coming out, and we know that while we might have grown beyond some of this information that I'm starting to present, we also know that yes, it can and does happen. Doesn't mean that that's who we are today. We don't have to define ourselves as a problem from our past. But if we recognize that we did experience that in our past and we've learned from it, then we understand that somebody else is going through that right now who has yet to learn from it. I have walked through the cow pasture many times throughout life, learned where the cow pies are at. And you're right. And plenty of times you stepped in shit and now you had to clean off your shoes. You make it sound controlling. But see, that's the point though. Um, that is actually the true reason why a lot of modern women get offended by man's masculinity is because the ideology of the role of the man is supposed to be the controlling one, believe it or not. Because if the man is supposed to know what to do, make all of the decisions, provide everything, this is equivalent to when your father took care of you as a child. He told you where to go and when to go there. He paid for everything. You did not have to think about anything that requires you to be responsible. You just had to show up and do as you were told. And when he asked you to help out, however he asked you to help out, you helped out. Ironically, because that is the role of men in masculinity. Women are offended by that because they're going to feel controlled. But a woman that has a man that knows what she wants and knows what she needs, he's able to calculate that into his logic and reason, accompany that with his needs, and move in a fashion where she does not have to focus on her needs because he's got that. She has more brain power to compute, making sure that he has what he needs. Because when a man looks at his resources, looks at the needs of his loved ones and his own needs, a man will almost always decide to sacrifice what he personally needs to make sure that the people that he loves get what they need. So she no longer has to think about what she needs. She can think about what she wants, but she no longer has to think about what she needs. But what will also happen is that she has more time to think about shit he's not doing for himself. There isn't enough going around. Everybody else got a new outfit. He didn't get one. Everybody else got a jumbo meal and he just got a side dish. Everyone else got a day off and he's working double shifts. Let me do something to take the stress off of his plate. Let me get him an extra outfit. Let me bring him a second meal. Let me buy him more sides. Let me give him a day off because he knows that he can't do that for himself because he will not be able to do enough for everybody else in his pack. So while it sounds controlling, the true dynamic is that the man takes care of the family and the woman takes care of the man. So if he is sacrificing himself for the family and she's making sure that his sacrifice doesn't go in vain, then it is a mutual symbiotic relationship. But the way modern society is right now, she takes care of herself He takes care of her. She doesn't get told anything about what to do and how to behave or anything to that effect because she's her own woman. Her autonomy is important, and she shows no value to her man. She reminds him how she doesn't need him. She reminds him how he's not valuable to her. He's just there because he's there, not because she wants him to be there. She expects him to stay there, but he's not valued, respected, or appreciated. How you doing, Greg? And yet she's looking for a man to tell her what to do because they want a man to lead. That means tell you what to do, where to go, when to go there. They want a man that can protect her, even if she can protect herself. They want a man that can protect her. They want a man that is smarter than them, that can make competent, capable decisions, which means that when he tells her that she's wrong because she doesn't know what's going on. He knows what's going on. He's done the research. They want that. But if they put themselves in that situation, they rebel against it because that man that they're looking for, the ideology of the ideal masculine man, is in authority. And a lot of women that want to be free from authority rebel against authority. So they have an unsuccessful relationship with a truly masculine man, and then they're unsatisfied in a relationship with a feminine or non-masculine man who allows her to be in control and have all of the authority because women are going to feel like that type of man is not masculine enough. And where do you split the line? That's one of the issues that we have. Because when a man does not perform at his utmost masculinity, he is shamed by society, men and women alike. Yes, women definitely disrespect nice guys. Women do not like the abusive behavior of the bad guy, but they appreciate that behavior more. They do not appreciate the vanilla guy that will cooperate and cohabitate. They want the guy that will put them in their place. But a man that'll put a woman in her place is a man that is going to assert his authority over her. Now, a woman that doesn't want a man that's going to assert his authority over her, she's going to want a man that is going to ask her of her opinion and then deliberate appropriately. But that also means you don't have a masculine man making decisions. You have a man asking you for your permission, asking you for your consent. And that's not the same thing. That's a completely different dynamic. So ladies, as y'all pop in, chime in. Tell me your concept of a masculine man as we go through this list. Even y'all that are watching from Twitch and Twitter, chime in because when we start looking at the men not being allowed to cry, I mean it's not inherently bad to cry. Responsibility is a good thing, but it becomes toxic when it's the only way that men are measured and their value is determined. When a man is determined to be a breadwinner, when a man is not allowed to cry, men have to behave a certain way. And then when we're in a society where if you can't afford to pay her bills, you're not worth it. Y'all remember, because most of us are middle aged on this podcast right now. Y'all remember back when Beyonce came out with that song "Bills, Bills, Bills," and what was it? Destiny's Child was talking about they ain't want no scrub. You know, men were in our society in the 90s and the early 2000s devalued if we could not afford to pay for her standard of living, regardless of whether or not she lived with him. In order for him to be deemed valuable to date her, he would have to be willing and able to pay for her standard of living. And that is actually when dating went downhill and it started becoming more transactional because he's got to pay for her phone bill, pay for her car bill, pay her rent, put gas in her car so that he can go out on dates with her, so that he can entertain her, which ultimately means that she is no longer taking care of herself, but she's in complete control of the entire scenario. Because at any point in time, if she is not satisfied with his decisions, if she is not satisfied with his behavior, or if another man can afford to spend more money on her expectations, that leaves her to transition to the man that has more resources. while not being committed to the man that is exhausting 41% of his income to entertain his female. Now, ladies, y'all don't have to like this, but think back now. Think back now. When did dating change for y'all? When were y'all starting to get more stuff and doing less to get it? If y'all remember, between the 90s and 2000s, y'all had less commitment and more generosity and more gifts and other things. This is what it is. Greg says to play devil's advocate, men oftentimes do the same thing with women's physical appearance. Uh, Special shout out to Greg. Now, see, I wish a woman would have jumped in here and said that because I would love to take that on because he's right. That is true. A lot of times, men have actually monetized sexuality of women, not only in advertisement and sales and marketing, but also in the dating field because women if they're not socially acceptable of the level of attractiveness to be considered a 9 or a 10 or whatever in the observations of just sexuality, sexual appeal, not her attitude or personality and all these other things. Take just how she looks before she opens her mouth. Some men will not pay for her lack of attractiveness. Some men will not protect her lack of attractiveness. Some men will specifically expect the girl to be a certain level, and if she can't meet that naturally, that's where women start buying fake eyelashes, fake hair, fake fingernails, waist trainers, push-up bras, water bras, butt lifters, at the gym 7 days a week working on hips and thighs only, can't pick up a box to save her life because she never works on her upper body. She only works on her butt and her thighs and maybe her inner thighs. You're right. Michael says it seems like a normal part of the human experience to want more than we deserve. Well, that is true. That is true. Well, actually, yeah, I would agree with that. That there are some areas of the human experience where we have is called desire, unrealistic expectations, where we want more than what we deserve. But we also have to understand that we sometimes beat ourselves up and hold ourselves to an unrealistic expectation of performance where we settle for less than what we deserve because we do not believe that we are good enough for what we actually deserve. And that's why I've told people on the podcast on a regular basis that your standard, a woman's standard for a man is what if he is providing for her what she is capable of providing for herself, then she has a man that is on her level. Now, what is the standard woman for a man? Well, if he has a woman that is willing to assist him in his ability to achieve whatever outcome he's trying to achieve, or she is taking significant levels of stress off of his plate without confrontation, that would be the most effective woman for that man. But see, the difference between the value of a woman to a man and the value of a man to a woman, a value of a man to a woman is based on his ability to contribute to her financially. And the value of a woman to a man is her ability to contribute to him effort wise. Now, women want to gauge women to men on the same basis based off of she can make money too, which further transactionalizes relationships. But when women demasculate men by saying, "Oh, we're going to do it all 50-50. I want to maintain control, but I want you to be a masculine man." The man can't lead if we're 50-50 because here's the question. I want to ask y'all this real quick. Um in a democratic position, everybody's vote is supposed to be weighted equally. If there's two people there and y'all don't agree, how do you decide to vote? Paper, rock, and scissors, flip a coin, what? If the votes are divided 70-30, 60-40, not 50-50, either we agree or we do it my way, that is when you have a leader. But again, if you have a leadership position and the dependent, which is the person that's being taken care of, is in the follower position. The person in the follower position typically gets pissed off because they don't want to be told what to do because they're grown now. You're not their daddy, but that's a problem. Michael said, I'm a strong man, confidence in myself. Gone downhill since women wanted some rights as guys. Greg says, it may sound callous, however, romantic relationships can often be transactional in nature. You have to understand that romantic relationships are completely transactional in Western culture. Lust is what drives it all. And then you also have to understand. Oh, he says duel. Du- Which one? You're gonna Call of Duty? You're gonna Grand Theft Auto? You're gonna sword fight? Which duel you're gonna have? You're gonna slap somebody in the face with a gauntlet? What you gonna do? WWE Raw versus SmackDown? The person who first blood match or no holds barred. You're gonna have falls count anywhere. You're gonna have a ref standing there with you holding the Money in the Bank situation, and whoever taps out first, that's how you decide your situation. If you think about the fact that you have to fight your partner to win in society, where it's supposed to be us against the world, the two of you are supposed to work together against any conflict that the family has. A house divided is a house that will fail. They say that on a regular basis. So that means that the woman and man must agree, or somebody must take the lead. Now, because of that, feminism dictates that the women believe that they should take the lead, but they also want to date a man that takes the lead. And that's the conundrum that I'm talking about. That's the paradox that I'm talking about. I'm not saying that women should not take the lead. I'm saying that women want a man that will take the lead while being taught in a feminist model that women should take the lead also. So you cannot have two leaders. One person must lead and one person must follow when you are talking about leadership. When you're talking about democracy, you have a vote, but when there's two people voting, you're not going to be able to do a majority vote. You either do a unanimous vote, which means we all agree, or we do nothing. But in a situation where something must get done, you cannot do nothing. You must do something, which means that one of you has to take charge and take action, which means that the other person is going to be pissed off and feel ignored because you didn't do what they wanted you to do. And that is the dynamic that you have to find balance in, is that how do a masculine woman date a masculine man where the two of you are supposed to make a decision and he's supposed to lead by her expectation, not by mine. And then she still wants to be in charge of the situation. He's not leading if you're taking charge. And if you're not happy with his lack of leadership because you're always in charge, you're going to end up not being happy in your relationship, and you're going to end up looking for a man that's going to do what? Take charge, but you don't want a man to tell you what to do. So how do women navigate that? That's a whole nother topic for another day, but I just wanted to throw that up. Oh no, you have trouble now. You better get used to the coach. No, I'm not going to get used to the couch. And the reason why, I bought the bed and I bought the house. I sleep in the bed. If she doesn't like it, she can sleep on the couch. You will not put me out of my kingdom because you're not satisfied with my decisions. You don't want to follow my decisions. You don't have to stay under my authority. But if you chose me to be your representative, to be your authority, to lead you in the direction that I think is best, it is my responsibility to make the appropriate decisions. But I am supposed to consult with you in decisions that will impact your outcome. So while we are deliberating, where I'm getting insight from you, but then I make the final decision, I will take what you have to say under consideration, but I will do what is best for us because I will be the one that will take care of the negative fallout. I will take responsibility for the negative outcome. I will be the one that will rectify the failed decision, which is different from when I'm following the leader of a female that is going to try to do it. And then if it fails, I still got to come and fix the failure. That is a completely different dynamic. Michael says the best relationships are mutual. That is not true. But you are right, as a leader. in the house. The best relationships are balanced, not mutual. And the fact is that you take turns asserting authority in the situations that you are most skilled at. So if the man knows more about cars than the woman, he makes the final decisions. If the woman knows more about clothes than the man, she makes the final decision. If the man knows more about the restaurants in the area, he makes the final decision. If the woman knows more about the vacation spot they're about to go to, she makes the final decision. It does not matter what decision is being made because she could have a degree in accounting and have been working in an accounting firm for the last 15 years and she can make better financial decisions than a man who has been working in construction and all he's been doing is shoveling dirt all day, where he might know that certain furniture is too heavy to get brought to the house in their vehicle, and he might elect to have it shipped there. She might want him to build it and he might decide to pay somebody to do it, or vice versa. He might want to save money and build it, and she knows that as much as he's willing to do it, he's not going to put it together correctly, and there's going to be missing pieces, and it's not going to be durable. And she might tell him to stay on that warranty, let the company who sold it to you put it together so if it falls apart, you get another one for free, and you do what she says because that's the most responsible way to go, the least catastrophic failure for your group. But it is not about mutual. Honest to God, the relationship is most successful when both people respect each other mutually, not take action mutually. One person is going to lead and the other person is going to follow. Now, you have to be able to respect each other enough to know when you know more about this particular situation than I do. So I'm going to follow your lead. But now I am choosing to relinquish my authority as a man in this situation to allow you to make the best decision for our situation. And likewise, when women choose a man that is supposed to make sound decisions, that woman is able to do the exact same thing and say, okay, you know more about stocks than I do. You know about Bitcoin than I do. I am choosing to relinquish my authority in this financial decision as a woman because you know more about this than I do. Doesn't stop her from learning, it doesn't stop her from being able to make decisions in the future. But right now, in the current conversation that she's in, if she knows less than her partner, instead of arguing with him about it on principle just so that she could be in charge, she should back down off the conversation and let him make the decision because he knows more about it than her. That is the only reason why she's following the lead because she knows that she chose someone that has more knowledge than her. Now, let's take gender out of the equation and let's put money in the equation. A rich person would put a genius in place to make the decision. Doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. You know more about this than I do. A rich person doesn't need to know about technology. They just have to hire five tech geniuses, five PhDs in tech. A rich person doesn't have to know anything about fashion. They just have to hire five fashion gurus. A rich person doesn't need to know anything about automotives. They just have to hire five automotive mechanic masters. Whatever you say, that's what I'll put my money towards because you know more about this than I do. I'm investing in your knowledge. Now, if women does the same thing with men, I am investing in your knowledge. They're going to make sure that they're getting a man that knows what the hell he's doing. Everything else is mutual. Bills, kids, savings, everything else is not mutual. Bills are mutual specifically because people are going to argue. We're going to both put half if we both got a job. But if one has a job and the other one doesn't, bills are not mutual. Kids are not mutual because the person who has the kids the most teaches the kids the most. So while you guys might talk about certain things like religious backgrounds and shit, most of what the children are taught is by the person who has the kids the most. When to sit down, when to shut up, when to come here, when to stop playing with that shit and take your ass to bed. That is going to come from the person who has the kids the most. So that's not mutual. And that doesn't mean that women are going to raise the kids better than men because statistics show that men raise children better because men are more logical and rational and women are more emotional. So the kids are going to be more psychologically and emotionally manipulated into following instructions because there isn't a logical reason why you're being told to do it. You just don't want mommy to be upset. Dad's going to make it make sense for you. And you're going to do it because that makes sense. Dad's going to proposition you with a deal, a bargain. Big difference. Uh, Greg says best relationships are when each other's roles are expectations are clearly defined. Yes, that is true. The best relationships are when everyone's roles are clearly defined and the expectations of one another are clearly defined. If a solution shows up, we talk about it. If you're in a relationship where you respect each other and a solution shows up, you guys talk about it. It is not her house unless she bought it. It is his house, which turns into an our house. In those relationships where the man moves in with the woman, it's her house, and then it turns into an our house. But once it becomes an our house, it's not his house. It's not her house. It's our house. And if our lives in this house for 7 to 10 years, depending on what state you're in, it is domestic property, even if you're not married, because common law marriage kicks into play when you both have established a relationship that has lasted longer than most marriages. You guys have discretionary divisions of property, where in family court, couples who have never been married would still have to divide up property in family court. Honey, calm down. That vein on your forehead is going to pop. There you go. We're talking about it. Come to bed. Cook breakfast in the morning. Exactly. Exactly. He said, better go get that belt. We got nah. So we got these remotes. You put a collar around her neck, and if she don't follow instructions, you electrocute her. That's what you remember to like and subscribe. Thanks, Greg. Oh man, you guys are funny. Y'all got to understand that this is going to create relentless pressure cookers of emotions where a any type of career setback isn't just a problem, it's a crisis for a man's identity. And it's a constant performance to provide your worth as a man. And the fear of failure is immense for men because if you're not a provider, if you're not providing, what are you? It has been determined plenty of times. Oh, he says it's her house, she'll get it in divorce. Not if you listen to me and you sold the house to the trust before you got married. Don't matter if she got a prenup or not. If you don't own the house, she can't get the house in a divorce. And if she's a beneficiary of the trust to the magnitude where she can use the house, she can't win the house because she has a lease with the trust. And even further, if the trust is owned by the business and the business is owned, well, no, if the house is owned by the business and the business is owned by the trust, then the lease for you and her to rent the house from the business allows for her to rent the house, but she doesn't own the house. The same way if y'all rent an apartment from your landlord, if y'all get divorced, she doesn't own the apartment. The landlord owns the apartment. Long as she's paying the rent, she can stay there. When she stops paying the rent, she gets the fuck out. But you're not required to pay the rent for an apartment that you don't live in. So, if the house that you own is sold to your business and the business that you own is belongs to your trust and she is renting the house from your business, you can in fact move out and you have a guaranteed tenant because she will be paying the mortgage on that house for as long as she stays in that house because that is not her house, that is the business's house. Now, that's some financial advice for you. Greg said, make sure you get the local Jews on your side. They will get you right during the vote sentiment. Well, you got to get you a really good lawyer and have your really good uh, uh, contract for possession of premises, and also have good contracts of ownership of your business and ownership of your trust to make sure that your estate is pieced together in the right fashion, and then make sure that you have the right information put together to will the have a living will or some type of estate contract that passes this information on to the next generation. And hopefully, before you die, like Kobe did, you got to make sure that you tell somebody how they can gain control of these assets before you die, so that when you die, that they can gain control of these assets and the assets aren't lost after you're dead. That's why diversity is important. Praise the Lord. Now, rule number three, we're going to go through a few rules, and then after we get through these rules, we're going to start talking about how we can fix this situation. Uh, Men are expected to be aggressive and dominant. This is an expectation for a masculine man. Go after what you want and don't back down. Now, this has always been a problem in modern society because if you go too hard, you're going to catch a case. Now, the world is a competition and you are expected to win it as a man. And this rule often blurs the lines between leadership and dominance, which is why we just had a good 20-minute debate between leadership and dominance. Because when women want a man to be a leader, but they feel like that is dominance and they devalue being dominated while looking for a leader, and they cannot find an equal medium between following the lead of your leader and rebelling against your dominator. But they dominate men so that they don't feel like they're being dominated. But once she's dominated her man, she has lost all respect for him, which is the part that doesn't make sense. And when there's a line between leadership and dominance, between protection and possession, there is a struggle there. And the lines are blurred as to where that's supposed to be at, what's too much and what's not enough. We realized after the fact that it was too much because she didn't like it and she left. And then we realized that it's not enough when the next woman complains about it and she left. And it's going to keep being that way because one of the things we have is a lack of communication in those relationships. That's the reason why those relationships aren't successful. Greg says, I'm so masculine and alpha that I exclusively enter romantic relationships with other men. I don't know how that makes you alpha, and I don't know how that defines your masculinity. However, I can tell you that I am not an alpha, that I am a sigma, because I could give two shits about how this is going to go down. I am going to do this for the best interest of me and for the best interest of anybody that is willing to follow my lead and be provided for under my income. Anybody that is benefiting from my resources is under my jurisdiction. And if you're under my jurisdiction, you're under my authority. And if you're under my authority, you do as I say. I will ask you of your opinion, especially if I am unsure. And I will make sure that I involve you in the knowledge of what I plan to do before I plan on doing it. However, I will not surrender my position as the leader of this situation. So, if I understand that she might have more knowledge about certain things. Like, for example, when we were talking about marrying women from overseas, if we went overseas and we were dating a woman that was overseas, she knows more about her country than you do. So you will follow her lead on what to do until you learn how to do it, right? But you're going to decide when we're going to do this because you're still leading. Likewise, if you're planning on bringing her back to your country, you're while she's navigating you through where you want to be and when you want to be there, you're still informing her that this is where you expect to be and this is what you expect to accomplish, and she's going to help you get there. Again, the helper that is reducing the stress from the man's ability to achieve his goals. Her value is still the same. Now, while they're together and dating or whatever, while he's living in her country, he will be providing for her probably more so than what she gets from her own country, but it's still going to be the same. So I don't see how your masculinity or your ability to be alpha is tied to whether or not you date other men. But I also understand that there is a dynamic here though that um out people who are men must identify as alpha to be identified as masculine, and I don't understand why that is. Because an alpha will fight you for the authoritarian position. That's it. A sigma will negotiate followers and subordinates, which is a little bit different. Why did you put my other account in timeout? It was a joke, dude. Who did you put in timeout? How many accounts do you have? Who did you put in timeout, Michael? I didn't even see that. I didn't even see. I told y'all Michael's running the show now. I didn't even notice somebody got slid into a timeout. Who did you put in timeout? Did you put Arnold into timeout? That's crazy. Well, you know what's funny about that though? Since you put him into timeout, we just figured out. Oh, Greg. Oh, Greg. So when Greg was tap dancing in the show the last time, talking about that nonsense, Michael know what to do. I'm gonna comment on it appropriately, but see when you start coming to me talking about because you gotta understand. Strike one was when you started talking about the Jews because I mean it doesn't matter what religion that you're in or what nationality that you're in. I mean men and women and social interaction is still the same. And then when you started coming out there, we have absolutely no objections about homosexuality, but as soon as you come out of the woodwork, redefining yourself based on a sexual preference, uh, you're attempting to take shots at folks that don't need shots to be taken at them. And at the end of the day, anybody from the LGBTQ community that would like to jump in and chime in on masculinity versus he's a cool unsubscribe, enjoy watching by yourself. That's great. That's great. Because at the end of the day, anybody who's LGBTQ community who's watching the show, they're gonna tell you men will tell you that regardless of whether or not they're dating another man, that they have the same experiences in their relationships that they would have with some of their homeboys and stuff. They're going to have less conflict than what they would have when they're dating women, but they were going to have the same experience that other men are going to have when they're hanging out with their homeboys and stuff when it comes down to deciding who's going to do what and when we're going to delegate and who's going to follow who's the lead. And even in a male male relationship, one male is going to make a decision and the other male is going to follow the leader. It does not matter which one it is. It doesn't matter if it's the masculine one that's doing it or the feminine one that's doing it. What matters is that there's a decision that needs to be made, and one of the two people has got more knowledge about that particular situation. And if you're in a position where neither one of you knows what to do, you guys agree that we're going to attempt this and formulate a backup plan just in case plan A fails. You might both have a good idea, and you might decide, well, since we both have a good idea, we don't know how the outcome is going to be. We'll do your plan first and then my plan second, so that if your plan fails, my plan will bring us across the finish line. Still a level of negotiation and compromise, but you still have to understand that we're deciding who's going to lead and who's going to follow. But you're not going to have two leaders going in two separate directions at the same time and have the entire team on the same side of the field. It doesn't work that way. So when he put you in timeout, bro, that's on you. He said, I think it was Horse for a minute. Well, if Horse was Greg, and Greg and Horse are both unsubscribing because you put Greg in timeout because he was talking about Jews and homosexuality unnecessarily, inappropriately, might I add. The fact is, it deserved a timeout. I I'm not here I'm here to bring facts. I am not here to take shots at people based on their race, based on their sexuality, based on their sexual preferences. And I'm not here to devalue anybody. I'm here to bring knowledge and facts and information. So if somebody in my comment section starts doing that, it's like, bro, give them a timeout. What's up, Rooters? Good to see you, man. Definitely a long time. Back in school, so I know that you're getting ready for your upcoming exams. And how's the girlfriend? Are you guys still dating, or did that not pan out? I haven't followed up on that in a while. He met a nice lady friend that's gonna play chess with him until he goes to college. That's fantastic. Maybe I'll go to the same college together. That'd be pretty cool. Now he he took. Hey, Michael, look, you're gonna love this part, Michael. So we're getting over 600 subscribers a day, right? So he told me that he unsubscribed, right? So we lost two and gained almost 700. I'm not gonna notice the two that dipped off. That might be the only two thumbs down on the platform for today's show. So everybody else, make sure that y'all like and subscribe. Hit the like button as y'all fly in. Give me a thumbs up before you leave. Special shout out to TF Fireball. Michael says he was putting time out. There was a message held for review before it got posted, and it was sexual in nature. Exactly. And if you reviewed it and you said nope, not happening, I probably would have seen it later and did the same thing. But you know, I'm not. I'm not going to question your judgment, man. I'm not going to question your judgment. You've been here for a while, and as men, we're trying to as adults, not just men, because I know that we got some women watching. A special shout out to the ladies. As adults, we're trying to behave ourselves and have a legitimate conversation here, because as y'all see, TF Fireball, Ruderus are young men that are not quite of the age of 18, and we got to show them respect. AT balls. She has become so playful, tries to always have fun, like punching for no reason and holding my cheeks. Well, that's cute when you're young. Uh, but if you don't like it, you just make sure that you're clear about the fact that you don't like being hit so much, and ask her to find other ways to express your affections. Michael says he's off to play chess. I appreciate you, Michael. I'm going to see you tomorrow. We got a lot of stuff to cover today because we had a lot of conversations, a lot of side conversations. So we're going to be here for a while. Now, recognize that what we've been talking about over the past hour is going to suggest that real strength is about imposing your will on the world rather than collaborating with the world that you're in. And that's one of the reasons why domination versus leadership is always a situation. Yeah, Michael plays chess. Um, he's actually, I don't know if you can see the friends list on chess.com, but I think he might actually be one of the guys that I play chess with. Should I get a degree or is it useless these days? The degree technically isn't useless for the sake of going to gain knowledge because you learn more things. I spent 8 years in college and I learned some stuff. Getting a degree specifically to get a specific job might be a problem because they do not teach you on the job experience, which might put you in a compromising position after you've gotten the degree because the degree is not, if you get a trade, the trade is going to teach you on the job experience, but a degree like um, a business degree is not going to teach you how to run a business. It's going to teach you how to analyze data for a business. A science degree is going to teach you how to do research, but it's not going to teach you how to operate on somebody if you wanted to be a surgeon or a nurse or something like that. You know, there's certain degrees that have a overall um, backwards dynamic to it, but it does not lead towards an actual occupation. So you don't have a file clerk degree or a assistance personal assistant degree. You have, you know, business and finance and tech and stuff like that. You can get a tech degree, but if you don't know how to code, that you still have to learn how to code from somewhere in order for you to be a coder. You can get a tech degree and know about hardware and not know about software. And that still means that if you're trying to get a job that is trying to look for software developers, even though you have a tech degree, you can't use that degree for what you're trying to go to. So what you need to do is find out what type of work you want to do, find a degree that is closest to that job, and then also try to put some time into interning into that field so that you can get the on the job experience while you get the degree because most decent jobs are looking for a bachelor's degree as a fundamental principle for employment and 2 to 5 years of experience in the field. So after you get the degree, then you go and get the years of experience. I mean, after you get the degree and years of experience, then you get the better paying job. Rudiva says, nah, it's okay. She don't hurt me much. As long as you're okay with it. She told me, please play correctly and lose in chess. But if I play accurately, I would win. And if I give up pieces, uh, she's like, nah, you are intentionally losing. Use your strength. I was like, what the fuck? It's a double standard. And that's what we're talking about right now is double standards. She does not want to lose all the time, but she does not want you to throw the game deliberately. But she does want to win more often than she loses. So every now and again, you have to accidentally miss a certain piece and then um, end up in a draw. Every now and again, you're going to have to miss a certain move and end up with a checkmate. In it, you got to play it like remember when we were playing balance games where her skill set versus your skill set, you might start the game with a few less pieces than her. That might balance the playing field out, and then because you don't have those pieces when the game starts, she might be able to beat you because you don't have as many options, which actually improves your skill set because you can learn how to win the game without being dependent on certain pieces like kings and rooks and stuff. So there's other ways that you can do that besides obviously letting her win. Um, you can play towards a certain side of the field where you're focusing on victory from one side of the field, ignoring the other side of the field, which could set you up for failure. And if she pays attention to it and capitalizes, then you could lose because you could not counter after ignoring half of the field for half of the game. So there are ways that you can let her win once every 7 games. So out of 10 games, you drew twice and she won once, and then the rest of the time you crush her. Soon as she starts bragging about how she drew and won a couple times, then you just like let her lose for the rest of the time. So that could work. But at the end of the day, she does want you to be your best self. She doesn't want you to diminish your skill set for the sake of her. So it's good to be proud of. It's good to be proud of. uh Special shout out to Ruderus and his girlfriend because I mean they've had a pretty long they met earlier this year. Well, they met for a while, but I encouraged them to get together earlier this year, and he's still having a fantastic relationship. So it's good to have. It's good to take advice from your elders because the elders know how to get through it. So there's ways around it. You can't deliberately let them get their way. You have to make it seem like they got their way by their effort. And that does take a lot more work. But a lot of times it's almost like you know how the parents tell you that when you take your tooth and put it under the pillow, that they put $1 under your pillow from the tooth fairy and all that other stuff. In order for them to compel you to take the teeth out of your mouth so that you don't end up with infections and stuff and tooth pain, they bribe you with the dollar. So to get the tooth out of your face, you're going to want that dollar. They're going to bribe you with the money. It's compelling. It's psychological manipulation, but statistics show that if you play to the strengths of the person, then the person will follow your lead more effectively. So if you know that person might be queen heavy, you might not take the queen. You might take other pieces besides the queen. But by not taking the queen and maybe a knight or a rook, you might be in a position where you honestly lost because you should have took the queen, but you didn't. And that's one way where you can let her win without her feeling like you let her win. So situations like that. Now, in situations, there are some very toxic forms. And this thinking that occurs in the toxic forms of masculinity is weaponized by social media influencers who sell a fantasy of power to insecure young men, telling them that success is measured by who you can control. So we have to understand that we do have a social stigma where when the men do tell the younger men what to do, it's like it's all about controlling other people, manipulating other people, leveraging is the nowadays the ideology that they're utilizing leveraging your network. And by them saying leverage, they're implying control. And you're controlling by finding what they need and using that as leverage to get them to do what you want. So you will give them what they need if they do what you want. That is control, but it's also leverage. It works in business. It is not readily utilizable in social interactions. However, that's what billionaires do. The more desperate you are, the more you're willing to do to satisfy your desperation. Where, as we said before, the $1 million man said it clearly that um, everyone has their price. It just depends on how much you have to pay. It is the truth. Statistically speaking, those people that are more financially challenged are more compromisable than individuals that are not. Those individuals that end up with secrets that they want to hide, whether they're embarrassing or it damages their reputation, those individuals are more easily compromisable than people who have no moral compass that can be corrupted by blackmail. Individuals who are bound by loyalty, duty, and dedication are easily compromisable when who and what they're loyal to is jeopardized or able to be sacrificed. To prevent your loyalty, yeah, exactly, Greg. You're sitting over here talking about you got put into a timeout. You didn't get banned. You're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna unsubscribe because I got put into a timeout. Probably a 10-minute timeout because he read your comment. He was like, nope, that's not flying on this show. You gotta watch what you say. We just got two young bucks that came up in here and they're talking about the betterments of life, and then here you come with comments that's gonna make their parents come over here and try to shut down my channel. Yeah, time out. Shoot. I did unsub from my other account. I don't mind. I don't mind. It does if you stay or if you don't stay. See, there you go with that again. So let's do another timeout. We had to do another timeout. This is what we keep telling you guys. You guys got to be appropriate. Rule number 4: men are taught that you're supposed to go it alone. Do it on your own. The lone wolf mentality. Self-reliant heroes. This is maybe the most dangerous rule of all because it breeds an epidemic of isolation. The belief that asking for help is a sign of weakness is a silent killer because men are constantly less likely than women to seek help for mental health issues. And one CDC report showed that only 13.4% of men receive any mental health treatment compared to 24% of women. And research from Pew has found that men are far less likely than women to turn to their friends for deep emotional support, whereas 38% of men versus 54% of women. And this leads to devastating loneliness. Respectfully, what? Special shout out to mixed martial arts. Oh, you can say it as long as it's appropriate. Go ahead and say what you got to say. Now, the statistics are heartbreaking. The American Perspectives Survey found that 15% of men reported having no close friends at all, a five-fold increase from 1990 studies. Recent reports suggest that as many as 1 in 4 young men feel lonely frequently or always. And this isn't just a feeling, it has lethal consequences. So, oh, shoot, we already got him. We already got him. I put him in a timeout, but I'm not sure if it because that's the second timeout that happened, he might be permanently banned. But he was banned just now for making a comment that he just made, and his comments were removed. So Michael has removed him once, and I have removed him once, and his he unsubbed from his alt. So if his alt comes back and makes inappropriate comments, then his alt will be banned. And we try to give people a reprieve, but you'll get permanently banned if they come up here with the recklessness because we're trying to learn stuff. This is an interactive podcast. So if you're on Twitch or Twitter and you guys want to comment, you guys are feel free to comment. We don't have to agree, but we have to respect each other and respect the people that are enjoying the show by listening when those people don't feel like commenting because we do have individuals that are watching this podcast that are not of the age of 18 and even if they were, we do not need to be speaking inappropriately and we do not need to be bashing any group or any type of social class of individuals specifically because of their personal preference. If we recognize that choice is unsuccessful to the agenda, then we recognize that that choice needs to stop and change needs to be made towards the agenda. The person's personal preference to make bad choices got nothing to do with me. It got nothing to do with the people that watch the show. The people who watch the show that recognize that they make bad choices can make the conscious choice to change those bad choices. Because the choices you make when you log off of the show is not going to impact me. The choices that you make when you're on the show impacts me. And my first person accountability is that I am responsible for the choices that you guys make. So when the comments come up that are inappropriate in nature, community guidelines are my responsibility, and the community guidelines are the responsibility of the commenter. My non negotiable expectations for behavior is that you guys behave appropriately, even if you don't agree with me. That's it. Mutual respect. So you can voice your disagreement to whatever magnitude as long as you do it respectfully. But we were having a pretty decent conversation until he started being disrespectful. And then after that, I was like, oh, he's got to go. Now, in the United States, guess what? Men have died by suicide at a rate of 3.8 times more than that of women in 2023, related to the lethal consequences of living a life flying solo, dealing with the stressors of life. Studies have found that men who strictly follow the rigid rules of the boxed man report significantly higher rates of suicidal thoughts, with some being more than twice as likely to have considered suicide, even if they haven't acted on it. And this is the price of the old rules. So we are told to be pillars of strength, but we are crumbling from the inside, isolated in our silent struggles. And we were sold a vision that is a specific version of masculinity that is emotionally and socially unsubstantiated and completely unsustainable. It promises power, but it delivers anxiety, disconnection, and profound loneliness. The script is broken and it's time for a rewrite. Now, you guys have hung in this long. I'm going to tell you the realization that the old script was broken wasn't a flash of lightning. It was more like a slow motion collapse. On the outside, a lot of us find out that we are doing everything right, good careers, physical activeness, the reliability of friends, people that we could count on, and we're playing our parts. And we thought that we were playing it well, but the inside and the outside is not the same because we still feel that something is off. We have this persistent low grade hum of anxiety that never shuts off, hypervigilance, and our relationships feel superficial. We could talk for hours about sports or work, but we don't know how to talk about what was actually happening inside of ourselves. We have friends, but we don't feel truly known. And we can, a lot of us can think about right now a time in our lives where we were sitting at a dinner table surrounded by people that we cared about. Laughter was flowing around us, but we felt like we was encased in glass where we could see it all, We could smile and nod, but we couldn't feel the happiness. You've ever been in that situation where you've gone to a social gathering, you are watching everybody else have fun and laugh and play games, and you guys, even if you're in the middle of the group, you still have this lonely hum of loneliness. We can find ourselves a spectator in our own life, and that feeling of disconnection is terrifying. The pressure to perform, to be that unshakable rock, is relentless. And a project at work wasn't just a project, it was a referendum on our competence. So a minor financial setback wasn't just a budget issue, it was a judgment on our ability to provide, which makes it harder because those of us who want to be financially successful, we have an unexpected financial expense. Then, or we decide for an impulse buy, and then we have an unexpected financial expense. And now we don't have enough money because the unexpected financial expense came right after the impulse buy. Now we're regretting the impulse buy. And now we have to go to a friend or a family member and borrow the money. God forbid, right after we bragged about the impulse buy. Now we're trying to get a bailout from somebody who values us to the magnitude that they might help us, but this isn't the first time that they have bailed us out. It is a resemblance of our ability to provide, whether it is for ourselves or for the other people in our lives. We carry this immense weight, but the rules said that we could not even admit that the weight was heavy. The turning point is going to come from after a particularly brutal week that a major deal that we would be working on for months would fall through at the last minute. And then we felt like a personal failing of catastrophic proportions was afoot. And then we would go home that weekend and just sit in silence and utilize a distraction like TV or working out or video games, but it would still feel hollow. The silence becomes more and more deafening, filled with all the things that we wasn't allowed to feel for ourselves. Things like disappointment, fear, humiliation, a profound sense of being utterly alone. All of these things fester within us, right? When we're usually turning our brains off from the stressors in life, we now have this idle festering in our brains that keeps us up at night, that has us now recognizing the disappointment we have in ourselves, the fear that we personally keep with us of being rejected from other people if they feel as disappointed in us as we feel about ourselves, the humiliation that we have from that fear, the profound sense of being utterly alone because we feel like we're in it by ourselves because we can't share this experience with anyone else around us without negative judgment. Uh, Mixed martial arts says over the past 10 years, I've graduated high school. Almost all of my friends have moved away or gotten married and have children. And the funny thing about that scenario is that out of all of your friends, you might find one of them that is genuinely happy. Think about the fact that the ones that are married with children are frustrated because the men don't have control over their relationships the way they would like. Their children are not able to be taught the way they want them to be taught. They don't have enough free time and availability because they have the children to deal with when they don't have to go to work. They have careers that take them away from their families where they don't have the time to be with their wife and kids the way they would prefer. They're obligated to work more time than they would have preferred to work to make enough money to cover all of the mouths they're obligated to feed. If their partner is working, they now have to split schedules where somebody's at home with the kids when they don't have a babysitter, which means that they can't get the good shift so that their partner can get the good shift on their job, making the better paying salary so that they can make the most quantity of money so that they can take care of the family. They don't have free time the way they would like to have it. And all of this leads to, probably out of all the friends that you have, like I said, whether you have 10 or 20 or 30 friends, you might have one or two that are genuinely happy with their life. It's crazy. In the moment of recognizing all of these feelings, you guys will remember something. And I can tell you that I've heard this before. Um, Something that was told to me from the men in their older generations, a veteran, a hard worker, a man who rarely spoke about his feelings, but loved gardening. One day, trying to move this massive boulder, old guys in his yard, he pushed and heaved, and his face turned red, but wouldn't budge. You think to yourself, why you didn't just ask for help? Guy would wipe the sweat from his forehead and say something that didn't fully hit until you marinate on it for a little while. What the man said was, sometimes you push against a rock for so long, you forget that you can also build a lever. Now, that's some pretty thick words. You get an aha moment from this because a lot of us have been pushing against the rock of expectations our entire lives, and we're exhausted and it wasn't moving. What if there was another way? What if vulnerability wasn't weakness, but a lever? What if asking for help wasn't a failure? Instead, it was a strategy. One night, this is going to dawn on you guys, and you will come to understand that you might need to do something different. Pick up the phone, call a closest friend. When they ask how you are, you break that cardinal rule. You don't just say, I'm fine. Tell them straight out, I am not okay. Now, just listening to me say that, those words feel terrifying, like a confession. And a lot of people are going to wait for the judgment or the awkward silence from any person that you're going to break this information down to. But the ones that are truly there for you, that awkward silence will never come. Instead, what you're going to hear is, I'm sorry about that. Tell me what's going on. Somebody calls me up and, oh, I'm not okay. First thing I'm going to say is, what happened? And the second thing I'm going to say is, what can I do to help? Because people of value are valuable to my ability to sacrifice for their success to a degree, because I cannot sacrifice myself to the level of failure in order to be the safety net of the people that I value. But when that person gives you the green light to tell you what's going on, you'll be able to start talking. And I mean, really talking. Talking about the pressure, the failure, the fear, the feelings of immense weight and pressure being so thick, but now beginning to shift. You stop becoming this rock and start becoming a human being connecting with another human being. And this is going to be the first small step towards building that lever. And it's going to change everything. This is going to be the turning point that starts a journey to figuring out what real strength looks like. And what we've found is the modern masculinity, which isn't about throwing out the old traits, but about balancing them with new ones. It's not about becoming less of a man, it's about becoming a more complete human. It's about finding a new balance built on four pillars. First pillar that you're going to have is your emotional resilience, because vulnerability is strength. For generations, strength meant stoicism, taking a punch and not flinching. Y'all remember that? But that's a brittle kind of strength. You do realize that flinching is the fight, flight, or freeze response to retaliate to defend oneself. If you are able to take a punch without flinching, then you have no defense, which means that you can allow yourself to be attacked and not defend. So, not flinching means that you freeze when you are attacked, which actually damages a natural survival instinct, which is never good. So, telling people don't flinch. These days, I would never tell my kids don't flinch. You about to catch an ass whooping? Don't flinch, block. Don't just flinch, bro. Block, block. React to this. I want you to react to this. Don't just stand here and take it. I want you to react to this because natural instincts requires reaction. But a truly strong uh material isn't just going to be a hard material. It's also a flexible one, like Kevlar. It can bend without breaking. And that is what emotional resilience is. Y'all know about, well, it's not like carbon fiber. Carbon fiber doesn't bend that much. But Kevlar is a good example. It is very durable and it is a bit flexible. But you have to understand that when you're dealing with emotional resilience, it's not the absence of emotions, it's the ability to engage with your emotions without being controlled by them. It starts with embracing vulnerability. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the courage to be honest about what you're feeling instead of hiding it. Think about this. When we were kids growing up, we always had situations where our parents would lie to us. The adults in the room would lie to us, and we didn't like it. We were told from kids to always tell the truth and then also never snitch, which was a conundrum. We didn't know when to tell because we were always told that motto, snitches get stitches, but at the same time we were also told by the teachers that when someone's in trouble, you're always supposed to tell the truth. So the thing is, why am I supposed to never lie, but you're lying to me? The dynamic was that the adults were afraid of how you would react, so they would not have the courage to tell you the truth. Now, their ability to tell you the truth, you're going to hold them based on trust and loyalty. But the problem that you have is that their fear of telling you the truth is going to cause you to judge them based on their honesty. Now, when the shoe is on the other foot and you lie to your parents, it is the same fear of how they will react to you telling them the truth and the fear of what the consequences might be if they find out the truth. But the problem is they can't help you if they don't know the truth. So, do I keep this a secret, try to figure it out for myself, even though I know I'm well over my head in this? Or do I take the consequences and go get help so that I can at least survive this situation and to accept the consequences of my actions? Usually, trying to cover up a mistake causes more catastrophic failure in life than accepting your responsibilities. The old model is going to tell us to bottle up our stress. The bottle gets shaken until either it explodes in a burst of anger or it implodes into depression. When it explodes in a burst of anger, you have somebody lashing out at the people near them, which is misdirected rage because not all the time are you yelling at the person that caused you to suppress your emotions. You are just releasing it at the person who is closest to you when you no longer can suppress your feelings. The implosion of depression is usually expressed in scenarios where we end up with those suicidal thoughts. We have individuals that react negatively and do other things like self-medicating, and the reactions to that implosion isn't always good. Emotional resilience is like installing a pressure release valve, and it's learning to say I'm feeling overwhelmed instead of pretending that you're fine. And you might not feel comfortable with saying I'm pretty overwhelmed, but you should find a way to feel comfortable about saying that. But start off by being able to admit, I'm extremely stressed out right now. Research from UCLA has shown that simply putting our feelings into words can lessen their intensity. When we embrace vulnerability, we don't get weaker. We build deeper connections and develop a more profound understanding for ourselves. The second pillar is going to be radical self awareness and a growth mindset. Now, the old masculinity was built on a fixed mindset. You were either a man or you weren't. The new balance demands a growth mindset. It requires radical self awareness and a commitment to honest reflection, which is why I explained to Michael earlier today that being able to explain to your friend that you need help and that you feel bad, that that is not weakness, that is not whining, that is the ability to reflect in a situation where you know that you need help, but you don't know how to resolve your situation. It's seeing your life not as a series of pass and fail tests, but as a journey of learning. It's having the humility to admit when you've made a series of mistakes and see it as a chance to grow. And when you're looking at those series of mistakes, some mistakes like getting a DUI, you can't just fix that overnight. Some mistakes like totaling out your car, you can't just fix that overnight. Some mistakes like peeing on your boss's desk and getting fired off your job, you can't just fix that overnight. Some mistakes about fighting the cop in the drunk take, you can't just fix that overnight. So there's some bad decisions that you've made where you have to recognize that at one point in life you made a mistake and you're still working through the consequences of that mistake, but this is still a chance to grow. You can still learn how to improve yourself so that when the consequences of your past actions finally resolve themselves, you can now move forward in a positive fashion. You know, a mistake, filing for bankruptcy when you didn't have to. You thought that you could file bankruptcy and keep certain things that isn't covered under bankruptcy, and then the case doesn't work the way you want it to work, and you still lose everything. Case is closed, but now you can't get a mortgage for 2 years after you file that bankruptcy. You don't have to destroy other people's lives or make a bad decision that other people say, I would have done that to begin with. The thing about the fact is that if you tried to save face and it didn't work out in your favor, and now the consequences of your actions is that you got to wait 2 years before you can finance a house. Even though everything else is in order, you've got you don't have enough for the down payment, but you have enough to qualify for a down payment if you did not have uh, the bankruptcy. Your credit score is great. You've got the income. The debt to income ratio is fantastic. You've got the payment history. Everything is in order except that one thing. You got to wait it out. So what do? You keep renting until your 2 year timeline is passed, and then you go finance the house. So now, instead of you immediately getting into the house that you wanted to get into, You now instead got to go find a different house because no house is going to be up for sale for 2 years if it's worth living in, which means that you're ultimately the dream house that you were looking at, that you were planning on, you got to pass that by, but it doesn't mean you can't get another one. So while certain dreams and ambitions in life are no longer attainable because of the poor choices we've made in our past, we can still achieve other dreams and other goals that are still attainable based on the options that we have left. But that means that we have to recognize that we have made mistakes in our past. And while those mistakes have negatively impacted our future, we do still have a future. And this also means refraining from ignoring the fact that if we reframe how we see asking for help, we can understand that those old rules, going to therapy was an admission of failure, not the truth. In the new balance, it's a proactive act of strength. It's like a pro athlete hiring a coach. It's a sign that you are so committed to being your best that you're willing to invest in the process, like getting an accountant to balance your budget, like hiring a lawyer to fight your case, getting a therapist to work through your issues is just like getting a personal trainer to get you in shape. It's not about fixing something that's broken. It's about optimizing a system that can be even better with professional help, of course. Pillar number three is going to be empathy and respect, which is what we were making sure that Greg understood today, because strength is going to be in connections. Now, the old masculinity often defined itself by what it was against, which is other men, the feminine, anything different. The new balance is defined by connection. It's built on empathy and respect. Empathy is the ability to understand how someone else feels, even if you haven't gone through it yourself, to see the world from their perspective. It's about listening more than you talk. It's about respecting non negotiable expectations for behavior, not just building boundaries. This empathy also extends to other men. Instead of seeing each other as rivals in a zero sum game, the new balance encourages seeing them as brothers on a similar journey. It replaces judgment with curiosity and competition with collaboration. Respect in this context is about recognizing the dignity in every person. It's a lot like what we do for multiple content creators in the same niche. Instead of just competing against each other for views and bashing each other over concepts to try to take views from other podcasters. Instead, we collaborate. We jump on each other's shows. We invite each other to each other's shows. And then we have extra people in the same niche all on same shows. It's almost like when you watch your favorite TV shows and you see your favorite stars, your favorite actors from other TV shows, guest star on your TV shows, collaborations. We're not competing against one another. You see WWE superstars watching the Super Bowl. You see pro football players at wrestling events. They do not host WrestleMania on Super Bowl Sunday, and they do not host Super Bowl Sunday on WrestleMania. They do not compete, they collaborate, and that allows them to be more successful. Respect in this context is about recognizing the dignity in every person. You understand? Now, a man who embodies this is secure enough to apologize when he recognizes that he is wrong and to accept others as they are. Now, I know that apologies, and I've been serious about this apology situation. I typically apologize when I deliberately did not intend on that outcome, where my actions were not deliberately to achieve that outcome. Now, I am not apologizing because I got caught. I am not apologizing for what I did on purpose. I apologize for how you are impacted by the results of my actions when I did not intend to negatively impact you with my decision. That's when an apology comes. The less you apologize, the more genuine your apologies are. If you just say I'm sorry because you want the conversation to end, if you just say I'm sorry because that's what they want to hear, if you just say I'm sorry because you don't know what else to say, your apologies are not genuine. Somebody says, "Oh, my family member is dead." "Oh, I'm sorry." No, you're not. You didn't even know. You didn't cause it. You didn't hear about it. It doesn't affect you at all. You might be embarrassed or insecure about the fact that you touched on a sensitive topic, but you mentioning someone that's dead that you didn't know was dead shouldn't be something worth apologizing for because you didn't cause it. But because people blanketly just say I'm sorry because that's what they believe they're supposed to say, means it's not genuine. Somebody else gets broken up with by somebody else. You're sorry. No, you didn't cause the breakup. You just found out about the situation. You're not sorry. What did you do to apologize? I understand what you're going through. You're not giving them pity. You're recognizing the fact that they feel pain. You recognize the fact that they are confused and frustrated, and you maybe even angry, but you are not sorry. And that doesn't mean that I'm emotionless or lack of empathy, because at the end of the day, in order for me to recognize that you feel bad, that your life sucks because something didn't go the way you wanted it to go, requires me to acknowledge that you feel bad. But me acknowledging it, that does not mean that I have to apologize because I didn't cause it. And that's why I tell you, you have to recognize when to apologize. And apologizing isn't softness. It's the profound strength that builds healthier families and communities. But being genuine about your apologies also more validates the person. Now, pillar number 4 is going to be balance and strength, because the mind, the body, and a spirit connection is highly important. Now, the new balance is going to be redefined in strength itself. The old model focused almost exclusively on physical strength. The new balance embraces a holistic view, valuing mental, emotional, and physical health as interconnected. Physical fitness is still valuable, but it's not the only kind of strength. Balanced strength means also training your mind by learning and challenging your beliefs. It means cultivating emotional well being through practices like mindfulness or creative expression. Assertiveness is still a virtue, but it's balanced with compassion. Leadership is still a goal, but it's expressed through empowerment, not control. One podcast noted that softness isn't the absence of strength, it's the strength wielded with precision. A truly strong man doesn't just have a strong body, he has a strong character, a clear mind, and an open heart. This all sounds good in theory, but what does it look like in real world scenarios? The beauty of this new balance is the men are already putting it into practice in creative and powerful ways. For decades, male bonding happened at the bar or on a sports field, places where the old rules often apply. Today, men are forging powerful connections in new arenas. Think of a book club where guys challenge each other's ideas, or in artist collective where they collaborate on creative projects. I know a group of men who started a hiking club, On the surface, it's about conquering a peak, but the real work happens on the trail, where conversations slowly deepen into discussions about work struggles, anxieties, about fatherhood, or other grief of losing a partner, because research shows that active participation in social clubs can increase feelings of happiness and decrease symptoms of depression and anxiety. And while men interact with one another in an actual group activity, they're more likely to open up and express themselves. So the old masculinity tells us to always push forward. The new balance understands the power of stillness. Practices like mindfulness and mediation are about training your self awareness. You also need to practice some meditation, but being aware, being able to negotiate, and being able to focus are things that you need to improve. It's like going to the gym for your attention. I know a lot of people come up and scream that they're ADHD or something to that effect. And the question is that when you look at what that means, that you do not pay attention, because attention deficit means that you do not pay attention. Now they're going to identify that as a disorder. And then ADHD is supposed to, I do believe, have hypervigilance in there. But you are not paying attention. Ultimately, that's what it is. Now, instead of recognizing that you never pay attention, outside of those individuals who clearly cannot focus, the rest of you that are just making excuses, why not find another way to focus your mind? We don't all have to take Adderall. Some people just choose to. By sitting in silence for just 10 minutes a day, you can do it up to half hour, an hour a day. You can end up learning to create a space between feelings and your reactions to it. Similarly, expressive arts are becoming a powerful tool as well. You don't have to be great at it, you don't have to be a Picasso, but the simple act of writing down what your feelings are without judgment can be an incredible release, a value that you have long forgotten, helping you make sense of the chaos that is inside of you. The traditional role of a protector can be expanded into the more impactful role of contributor. Hold on now, effort over resources. Volunteering is a powerful way to build empathy and purpose. So imagine a man volunteering at an animal shelter, using his patience to soothe anxious animals. Now he's practicing nurturing, a trait often discouraged in men. Or consider a man mentoring a younger person. He's sharing his wisdom, not for personal gain, but for the good of his community, where more often than not in lower income society, we have less mentors for the children. The single family homes have the parent who is primarily the mother or the female that is spending more time at work getting the money to take care of the children because it's a single family household, single adult household, and there is less guidance to the children because there's very little co-parenting. And co-parenting doesn't just have to be the mother and the father. Co-parenting could be the aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, nieces, nephews, whoever's old enough to watch the kids. The co-parenting, you back in the day, it used to take a village to raise a child, and now it's just you and the babysitter that you can afford to pay. So having the ability to mentor for free the next generation where they do not have accessibility to that guidance, where you're providing them with positive information. You're doing this for the betterment of your community because remember, the children of today is the leaders of tomorrow. The 20 and 30-year olds right now will be running the country in 20 or 30 years. When I'm in my retirement years, the 20 and 30-year olds that are watching this podcast will be in charge of the country. So if I spread my wisdom to all of y'all, likely some of y'all will take heed to it And hopefully, y'all will be in those powers of authority where you will make those uniform changes that is beneficial to the majority of us. And hopefully, I'm part of the majority. These acts counter the isolation of the old ideals and connect men to something larger than themselves. Studies show that volunteering combats feeling isolated and can reduce stress and symptoms of depression. So, for a long time, masculine roles were limited to stoic cowboys and aggressive action heroes. But positive masculinity is being modeled all around us. So, if we know where to look, we'd be able to find this. If you think of a character like Ted Lasso, who leads with kindness and vulnerability, or real world examples like actor Richard Gadd, who uh, he has the show Baby Reindeer, demonstrated immense courage by sharing a story of being a male survivor of assault, shattering stigmas. Got to watch that movie. The goal is to define masculinity on your own terms, inspired by a diverse range of examples rather than trying to fit into a prepackaged box. Now, these strategies aren't about abandoning traditional masculinity, they're about the expansion. They show that strength can be quiet, that leadership can be gentle, that connection is a superpower. The proof is in the men who are living healthier, more connected lives by embracing the new balance. Now, this conversation doesn't end here, it's just the beginning. And I've shared a lot of stories, but the most important voices that have to be heard is yours. And we're all here figuring this out together. So, I have an invitation for you guys because in the comments down below, I want you guys to share what masculinity means to you today. Tell me what role from the man box that you're trying to unlearn, and what's one principle of this new balance that you're trying to live by. Because by sharing our experiences, we show each other that we aren't alone on this journey. And we create a community of men committed to building a healthier, more fulfilling manhood. We can then join in a conversation where we are not alone and we feel empowered to communicate. I want to build that blueprint with you guys together. And for far too long, we've clung to a definition of masculinity that's a relic. It's a suit of armor that we were told that we would protect ourselves using this behavior, but it has become a cage. It has restricted our emotional range, starved us of deep connections, and left millions of men feeling lost and isolated. The statistics on male loneliness and suicide are not just numbers, they are a collective cry for help. They are the final tragic proof that the old way isn't working, but a profound transformation is underway. Men are waking up to a new way of being, one that doesn't force a choice between being strong and being soft, being uh, being able to determine the difference between being a leader or being a nurturer. The new balance that we've talked about today is not about the feminization of men. Instead, it is about the humanization of men. It's about having the courage to access our full humanity. Imagine a world where more men have the tools to navigate their inner lives, where fathers can model emotional honesty for their sons, where partners can connect with deeper intimacy and trust. Imagine workplaces where leaders foster collaboration, not competition, and communities where the epidemic of loneliness begins to recede. This is the tangible outcome of embracing a more balanced masculinity. Now, the journey starts with a simple choice, the choice to question the old script, the choice to take one small step towards authenticity. Maybe it's admitting to a friend that you're struggling. Maybe it's starting a mindfulness practice, or maybe it's just giving yourself permission to feel something other than anger or indifference. The challenge to you is this: what is one piece of that old heavy armor that you can set down today? What is one crack that you can let show, not as a sign of weakness, but as an opening for the light to get in? Because the world doesn't need more rocks, it needs more men who are whole, men who have found the new balance. And in doing so, we have discovered what it means to be truly, powerfully, and authentically strong. So that was a lot to take in. And I really appreciate you guys for riding that wave with us. I want to say, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you ladies to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. But, fellas, as I told you earlier, 68% male driven podcast from the male's perspective. And I do this to build you guys up to be higher value men. But I also recognize that this information is not exclusive to just the men, because while women do not have a masculinity complex, women do have the same feelings and experiences that men have. And this information might be able to help some of the women become more valuable women to themselves as well as to their partners and their societies. So you'll be able to take a look at what's going on in your life and be able to determine that some of this information might be beneficial to you. If there's anything about your life that resonates with the show, make sure that you take time to like and subscribe. Share it with somebody that you know is going through this so that they can listen to this and they can learn and improve. Take the time to put effort into the success of yourself. First and foremost, recognize that you are the first person responsible for your success. So you have to be able to observe where your life is lacking. What has you unhappy with your life? Is it relationships? Is it social interactions? Is it a work life balance that doesn't have the right kind of balance? What is going on in your life that you wish were different, that you recognize is inside of your immediate control? Start there with making your changes. If you don't know what to do, put that idea into the comment section. Let me know, and then I'll figure something out for you. The first step to making change is recognizing that there is a problem. And the second step in making that change is recognizing that change needs to be made to resolve that problem. Once you've crossed that hurdle, you are now on the most important part of your path, which is looking for a solution to resolve the immediate problem. I can help you with that. So remember, we are live 7 nights a week. We're not going to let the sun rise without going live, but we also have the understanding that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we're going to be talking about self improvement. So we're going to be doing more discussions about masculinity tomorrow. Make sure that you guys take the time to hit the notification button for tomorrow's show. We're going to be following up with more different information tomorrow and a little bit more information on Saturday. Then Sunday, we're going to have questions and comments from the fans. So if you've got some left field questions that you'd like to ask, you can preserve them till Sunday, or put them in the comment section after the show, and I will do what I can to review that information and provide you with a response. Beyond that, remember Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we're going to be talking about how to improve your finances, and we're going to be talking about how to make extra money so that you have more money to make more money for you. If there's some investment opportunities or money making ideas that you're not sure about and you want to ask about it, if I haven't covered it on the show before, I will cover it here on This and That, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. We talk about a lot of things, but it's about recognizing a problem and finding a solution. It's not about just complaining about how things don't go the way we want it to go. So, with that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming to this and that. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I will see you guys tomorrow night.
Chase validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt upon the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher, constantly making my own climb. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command.